Despite the obvious differences between spoken language and sign language, the two types of languages do share some fundamental similarities, in particular, duality of patterning and syllabic rules. Duality of patterning is one of Pocket's 12 design features. It assumes that linguistic expressions can be broken down into minimal meaningful units called morphemes, which can be further broken down into meaningless units called phonemes. This happens at two levels, the morpheme and the phoneme level. A phoneme is the smallest phonetic unit in a language that is capable of conveying a distinction in meaning. In English, phonemes differ by place of articulation, manner of articulation, and voicing. To find phonemes, we look for minimal pairs in a language. Minimal pairs are two separate words that differ only in one sound and one location. Let's look at the minimal pair cat and map. We can see that K and M distinguish meaning in the two words but by themselves are intrinsically meaningless. For example, when K is at the beginning of a word, it doesn't always contribute to the same meaning of that word. Cat and cab both begin with that sound, but they don't have similar meanings at all. This shows there's no meaning you can systematically associate with the K sound. In ASL, phonemes are distinctive based on location, hand shape, and movement. In ASL, we can observe name and chair to find minimal pairs. We can observe the differences in the video. Note the fingers. Everything is the same except the hand shape. Therefore, this is a minimal pair. As with English, the phonemes in ASL are intrinsically meaningless. A particular hand position doesn't always bring a particular meaning to the sign it is part of. Now let's look at morphemes. Morphemes are meaningful units of language that cannot be further divided up. In English, we have the morpheme This is an example of a derivational morpheme that changes a verb into a noun. For example, we can have the verb and root morpheme teach. When we add the suffix morpheme of to the end, it becomes teacher, a noun. ASL has morphemes too. Observe the same root morpheme teach. And when adding the agent or subject as a suffix morpheme, we get teacher. Therefore, phonemes which distinguish meaning and morphemes which have meaning make up the two levels of duality of patterning in both English and ASL. It is important to note that although sound segments in English are not associated with meaning, morphemes in English are associated with specific meanings. For example, in English, baker, catcher, hater all have the ER morpheme. ER always attaches to a verb and yields a noun that means someone who verbs. Similarly, in ASL, the agent sign has a similar role. Supervisor and dancer all have the same agent sign attached to the end of the root verb, forming a noun that describes someone who verbs. Now let's look at syllables and the sonority hierarchy. A syllable is the unit of organization for speech sounds and is considered to be the phonological building block of words. Here's the layout of the syllable. The vowel of a syllable is in the nucleus, and the consonants are surrounding it within the onset and the coda. Syllables in English follow a sonority hierarchy. The nucleus should be the loudest or the sonorant peak. For English, a phoneme sonority is determined in relation to the relative loudness of other phonemes. Here we can observe vowels are the most sonorant while stops are the least sonorant. We use the sonority hierarchy to determine the ideal syllabic breakdown. For example, art follows it while rata does not. Therefore, rata seems awkward. ASL is organized by syllabic rules similar to English. In his paper, Sonority and Syllable Structure in American Sign Language, David Perlmutter writes that in ASL there are two basic segments, movement and position. Movement is defined as a change in position of the hand shape during the sign, while as position is defined as a clear articulation of a particular location on the body, at the beginning or end of a sign. Movement and position segments are organized based on a sonority hierarchy that mimics to one found in English. For ASL, there is also a sonorant peak. This is a segment of maximum energy. The movement of a sign is the most energy consuming and hence could be labeled as maximum energy. M's correspond to vowels and P's correspond to consonants in ASL. In sign languages, movement of the hands is more apparent than when hands remain in a single position, therefore more sonorant. Let's look at some examples of sonority hierarchy in ASL. In the sign for improve, two position segments sandwich the movement segment, which is the sonority peak. Therefore, this follows the rule. In English, the sonorant nucleus can stand by itself. For example, the word I. Similarly, the sign for fly simply has a long movement segment. There are virtually no signs that consist of only a position segment. They are almost always required to be associated with a movement segment. This shows that the movement segment acts like the nucleus of English words. In conclusion, by observing duality of patterning and syllabic rules in both English and ASL, we can easily see their fundamental similarities.